Hey guys, Darren Kelly, coach of Wiser Squads, and welcome back to another episode of Team Review post round 18, where we had a round of absolute carnage. I'd be very surprised if everyone avoided the carnage this round, but it finally hit us. We all sort of knew it was coming at some stage. We've had a pretty good stretch this season where we haven't had a huge amount of carnage so far. It all came at once as expected, and we've all got a lot of issues to address this week with a lot of forced trades. So it's hard to sort of look at the team to be like, where the hell do you start first? But we will dissect that as we go through the week. I'm sure I don't really need to tell you this, but I'll quickly run through the issues that we need to address first. So we've got Nick Martin, who unfortunately went out with that 18 points with an ACL injury that has now been confirmed. So his season is done now, and potentially even looks like he'll probably be out for majority of next year as well, obviously being a 12-month injury. So he will potentially be cheap for us in 2027 if you're looking that far in front. But yeah, that's just the way my brain sort of works. Look at the break even on this guy though. 178 is something I have not seen before. That is just ridiculous. But he dropped over 100k, so that does not help in the world where we're trying to trade him out, because now he's got no money in his head and it actually costs us to get him to someone. So that's super annoying. So he is one that was a certain trade out at this stage. We've also got Tristan Cherry, who has now been confirmed to have a 3-week suspension following that high hit and knockout to Sparrow against Melbourne there. That's just super unfortunate. Obviously accidental. It was careless. I understand the reasoning behind the suspension, but it still doesn't feel right in my opinion. He's just going for the ball, but we've seen that throughout this season so far, where they're going for the ball, they accidentally cop him eye, knock him out. Doesn't matter of their history of suspend or anything about concussions. He's gone. So it'll be interesting to see if they appeal it. I'd be very surprised if they do, and if there'll be any outcome of that. I don't think it'll change much. So here's another forced trade that I think a lot of the competition have. I saw a stat on Twitter. I think it was by Jaden. His sort of diagram. I think it's like 6,000 of the top 10,000 coaches have the combination of Nick Martin and Tristan Cherry. So that's 60% of the competition that already have those two alone. So I think a lot of the people will just be looking at a lot of scenarios with these two, which obviously I will be with my team so far. But another one that's super annoying having to trade out, because his run was going to start opening up as of next week, which is the reasons why we sort of held him through. He has been pretty poor and obviously finished off with a 58 points there on the weekend. Super disappointing. I know it was a tough matchup, but yeah, he's got to be better than that. Only 7 touches, six tackles, yeah, and only 22 headouts. A very poor effort there. So that is super disappointing. Obviously needs to go. So that will be interesting to try get him up to a decent player. I'll sort of get into that later in this video, who the options I'm looking at. And the last one is the likes of Connor Rosie. He was subbed out at sort of just after halftime, I think it was, 55%, or middle or third quarter or something like that. Didn't actually watch this game. But yeah, he's got a dislocated or broken finger. Hasn't sort of been confirmed yet, but it has something to do with his finger. So pretty poor effort, in my opinion. You've got guys like Thilthorpe and all that sites that are playing through these sort of injuries, and he just can't stay on the park for his team in the scenario where his team wasn't even winning, and that point in time is pretty crazy to me. That, you're the captain of the side, surely you can push through a bit of a finger injury, but at the end of the day, he is another one that is a bit of a concern for me. I think it's doubtful that he'll play this weekend. They'll play it safe. They've obviously got to travel to Tassie this weekend to versus the Hawks. So I would be surprised if we don't have him this weekend. So make your plans of how you want to sort of cover him, if you just want to hold him through 1 week, or if you're in the luxury position to be able to move off of him, if you want an owner of the other two. I do think those other two in Nick Martin and Cherry probably have precedent over the likes of Connor Rosie at this stage until we know a bit more. But that is pretty much all the carnage so far. I've also got confirmation that Jason Horne-Francis is also his season looks like he's done with a bit of a fractured foot. Picked up on the weekend. Didn't look like he picked up anything, because he just went absolutely crazy in the for the final 3 quarters of that game. But yeah, he looked like a pretty prime target for a lot of people this weekend. I know before confirmation, I already had him sort of in my team, in my trade plan, so I've had a little bit of a pivot. So There's definitely a few interesting options that we've got to address in the forward line this week. So, 4 major carnage options this week. Hopefully, you don't have all 4 of them. It'd be pretty unlucky to have all of them, but I've got 3 of them. But yeah, we'll see how we sort of go. But how did my team go? It finally happened, guys. I finally moved back a couple hundred. Sorry, I moved back 100 spots this week. The first drop I've had in probably since before the buys, even probably in the single digits in the season. So, moved back about 100 spots with a score of 2070, which surprised me. I thought I was on for a pretty bad week. It started pretty poorly. With Thursday night, I only had one player play, which was Kyle Lohman, so he didn't count anyway. In hindsight, I should have probably taken it, but I was never taking it over the likes of these two at the top. So that's just a bit of a hindsight is funny thing there. But then even Friday night was terrible. I had the likes of Ned Long play, who I was expecting to go much better. At least had hit an 80 son, but he put up a 53, and I'm very concerned of his job security now. Nick Dacos, I decided to go with the VC on him. Uh, on the I sort of decided on the Thursday night, Friday night, after they sort of confirmed that he wasn't going to get tagged. I was sort of a bit concerned there, but he's obviously the boxes were ticked that should have had a proper game and should have gone massive, but he sort of got injured in the first quarter, went down to the rooms, got a little bit of a jab, and then spent a lot of the time forward. So I can't really blame him too much for a bad score, but that was pretty disappointing as my VC. But then I just played it safe into Merritt, who only put up 102, which was a little bit underwhelming. But at the end of the day, when I look back at all the other things that I could have gone with, and when I look back at the stats of who picked what, I'm okay to take 102 at the end of the day. Where people were, I think 9% of the competition went with a C on Nick Martin, and I think 20 something percent went on Connor Rosie. So if 30% of the competition went with those two, I'm happy with 102, honestly. But obviously, I did say I was gonna go into Brody Grundy in my captain's video, so pretty disappointed I didn't stick with that at the end of the day. But I guess just the way things lined up, there was 2 ruckmen playing against Brody Grundy. Sort of made sense to move off of him because I wasn't fully sure how that was going to go. So that's how the captains went. Wasn't too upset with that. But yeah, round rank of 16k. Pretty disappointing after what has been a pretty solid couple months for me. But yeah, that's just what to expect with a round of carnage. I think it was just one of those weeks where it was a good week to have a pretty ordinary team, and I'll sort of classify my team in sort of in the middle class at this stage, with still a few poorer players in there, but a few decent ones as well. So, but yeah, reviewing my trades last week. Overall, I'm okay with it. It could have definitely been a lot better in hindsight, as they always can be, but I was happy with the trade out Sam Doherty. He put up a pretty bad 69, and obviously is running on borrowed time at this stage. Does have Melbourne this weekend, so obviously if you are an owner and have to hold him, I don't think it's a huge concern. He should go okay as long as he holds his spot. Fingers crossed. We definitely don't need any more carnage to come at team selection. That would just put a pretty much damper on a few things coming into the weekend. But happy he's gone. Tom Stewart, though, put up a 112 in a pretty tough matchup. I think the toughest matchup for designated kick-out players, but he just was absolutely massive in that game, intercepting everything, just like what Tom Stewart can do, but just not consistent enough, and funnily enough does come into a couple of decent matchups now. So poorer one for me to trade out, jumping off 1 week. At the end of the day, I could have traded out Ned Long instead of Tom Stewart and would have been, 60 points better off this week, but end of the day, not only 60 points, because that was just those two. Yeah, I don't know. I can't calculate in my head, but yeah, it would have been a massive amount of points better off than what trading at Tom Stewart did. But overall, I'm happy trading in these two. Merritt, I said, probably a little bit underwhelming for a 102 against the Richmond matchup. Now coming up against a tougher run, obviously with tags and whatnot. But my argument there is I'm not expecting tags to go in Zach Merritt's way, because who the hell is tagging a team that's losing to Richmond? They are so bad at the moment because they are so injury plagued that you should not have to tag a player against them. You should just win based off merit, who, fun enough, plays with them. But yeah, you shouldn't have to tag him. It's just plain and simple. So hopefully he can get it done for the next couple of weeks. But yeah, still I may look to trade him out at some stage in a couple weeks. But Butters obviously super happy trading him in. Like I said, he went pretty much a guaranteed 100, I thought. But to see him go 125 in a good matchup was very, very nice. Could have been bigger with a few plus. Sorry, I had the one free kick against, which is a bit annoying, but only 2 tackles is, I guess, to be expected against a team that doesn't really possess the ball as much. So he was good there. So overall, happy with the trade-ins to go 227 combined. You got to be happy at the end of the day. So happy with those. But let's go to my +3 and -3, where I should have started. But +3, I have to go to Bontempelli this week. He was by far the best player in the competition on the weekend. I think he was 15 points better than the next person who scored this weekend. So he just had to get the +3 in what was a tough matchup as well. I just did not see a big score like that come from him. He sort of bucked the trend that he only goes well against the easier matchup so far this year, so which was a pretty positive move to see from him. So hopefully he can continue this form for the remainder of the season. He just sort of did all the things that we know he can do. Gets to plenty of disposals, get plenty of marks, and get plenty of tackles when he's in there. So yeah, sort of made up for the likes of Matt Kennedy, who obviously went really, really poor in that same matchup. 30 points was definitely unexpected. And is a huge concern. Obviously, his role didn't change too much. It changed a little bit. He dropped about 20% in terms of CBAs, but still had plenty of time. And that shouldn't equal 60 points less than what he's been averaging, or even 80 points than what he's been doing in the past sort of 2 months. So that's super disappointing. Hopefully, it was just a one-off game and he can bounce back this weekend, because we all have to hold him at the end of the day. But he's got a massive break even, 167, and he's going to be plummeting cash with a 684k on the weekend. So not good for team value. And if you're in a luxury position where you don't have any of the carnage, then maybe you can jump off him. But I just couldn't even fathom that at this stage. So not even looking at that one. So, but my -3, that probably was my -3, Matt Kennedy, to be honest. I could have given it to a host of different players, from Long to Cherry. I wouldn't give it to Martin or Rosie just for the injury, but could have gone to, Holmes for an 80 as well. Just super disappointing. Just, yeah, one of the unusual rounds of the weekend, for the year, sorry. But I won't dive too much deeper into the players, I don't think. Just Nasai got tagged, so that was sort of expected. Not too much to worry about there. Holmes just tagged himself, just didn't get it done. Obviously spoke about Rosie. Sheasel and Sinclair did okay, obviously with Nasai getting tagged. Sinclair went okay. Sheasel just did his thing as a bit more of a midfielder role, which was nice to see. Callum Mills, 65. This guy's just a yo-yo in a decent matchup as well. The funny thing is, he was on 66 points at 3/4 time and put up -1 in the 4th quarter. This guy just does not like 4th quarters. He just always fades out of the game in those every single time. It's so frustrating. So yeah, I'm not going to get my hopes up anymore when I see Callum Mills on a decent 3/4 time score, because I just know it's not going to get any better realistically. So yeah, I would love to trade him out as well, but at the end of the day, I can't this weekend. Shout out to Andy Brayshaw for putting up a big score in a tougher matchup as well. He was a pretty strong one in that Hawthorn game. Jordan Dawson in the same game as Bontempelli put up a massive 129 and probably should get the 3 votes in terms of the Brownlow, just for his performance of 27 disposals, 2 goals, 8 tackles, just got it done and got his team over the line at the end of the day. So he probably deserves the 3 votes, even though Bontempelli was clearly a big standout. We'll see how that sort of goes. McKercher, 88. Poor final quarter as well. He was looking like he was on track for a decent ton as well, but yeah, just faded late. So it's a bit disappointing as they sort of changed his role again. Not as much +6s as he got in the weekend before, but yeah, he's fine to keep at M8 or D6, wherever you sort of have him for probably the remainder of the season with how he's performing. Brody Dundee gets it done again and was probably one of the only ruckmen to really get it done this weekend. If I go here, let's go last weekend. So Tim English is probably the only other decent ruckman this weekend. that is probably popular. Besides that, the likes of Marshall was down at 70. Grundy had like a 90, I think it was. A Gorn, sorry. Sorry, man, I can't even find him. But anyways, yeah, and then obviously Cherry put up that 58. Those are sort of the main ruckmen that are worthwhile. Even the Dust Cameron put up an 82. So it was not a round for ruckman at the end of the day. And then obviously all the forwards have put up these sort of semi decent scores. Caleb Daniel just cannot hit a ton in his career. Just does not get it done. So frustrating to own because I think it was on like 80 points at 3/4 time. Just needed to get a casual 20 points in the final quarter. Just faded late. Couldn't get plus sixes and just even ran away from kick-ins when at the time. So super frustrating. But yeah. But surprisingly, Rankin put up a nice 93. Back-to-back decent scores. Even the last three have been okay. And just seems like not the issue at this stage, even though I thought he was going to be pretty bad. So, yeah, glad I sort of held on to him at the end of the day. So that's how the team performed. Let's sort of move on swiftly to what I'm looking at this weekend and have a bit of a discussion about what we need to look at. So obviously we need to look at moving on the likes of Tristan Cherry and Nick Martin. Like I said, 60% of the top 10K are in the same sort of boat as I am. If you're lucky enough not to own these two, then I guess the same sort of applies if you have a Connor Rosie. You could look to move on him, looking like he'll be out for this week and potentially could be a bit longer depending on how that finger sort of holds up. So you could move on him and continue to be aggressive. Or if you have a Jason Horne-Francis, I'd move off him before the likes of Connor Rosie. But yeah, it's a super frustrating one if you have those three of Nick Martin, Tristan Cherry, and Horne-Francis because all of them are out for probably the next 3 weeks at a minimum. So what am I looking at doing? This is what I've got up at the moment. I'm pretty keen on getting on Brodie Grundy as sort of that next best option. Obviously, I already have Brodie Grundy, so I'm looking at getting on Max Gawn as the next best option with his run coming up. It's not great this weekend. He's got the up against the likes of Pitnet and Tom de Koning. More so Pitnet than anything. He put up a 108, I think, against them last year when he played those two ruckmen. So expecting him to sort of hit those same sort of numbers, but no massive ceiling this weekend is probably 1 week too early. Obviously, I would have liked it if it happened next week, but we unfortunately can't undo what's happened. Just because the break even's 152. He's going to drop coin no matter what you do in terms of bringing him, but that's just what you do this time of year. A lot of people brought in the likes of Lockie Whitfield last week. That worked out pretty well if you went there with a 120. Even if you went Errol Goulden, a couple weekends ago, he's been pretty on fire for a higher break even though he didn't sort of give that reward this weekend with I think a 90-ish score. So it's just what you do this time of year. You don't really worry about the break even too much. You just worry about what the price is at and if they're going to go okay for the remainder of the year or in a decent matchup. So I think it's number one, you go on Brodie Grundy if you can get there with his extreme price tag. I don't care what his price is at. He has got the best run home for the remainder of the season. I'll even show you that here. He's got a North with no Tristan Cherry, so he should be absolutely massive this weekend. Could be on the cards of a 140, 150 if he continue his fine form, but only has one tougher game for the remainder of the season with the likes of a Darcy Four or Oscar McInerney, if not both of them at this stage. So he's by far got the best run home, and he's well worth the $1.2 million that he is priced at. Besides that, you got Max Gawn, who only has, one tough matchup before he goes on this green mile of matchups that we've all been eyeing off since we traded him out at his buy. He sort of got over the past 3 tougher matchups, all just going with that, what's he been going, the 90s? Just under the 90 tick, which at the end of the day, if he held, isn't too bad, but he has dropped over 100k in the last 3 weeks, so it's not that bad if you're jumping back on. So I think he's the next best option. The only other option you realistically got, though, in my opinion, is Tim English. If you want to pay that a little bit extra for that, a little bit more of a... He's not going to drop a huge amount of coin. He's got a decent matchup for the remainder of the year. Tougher one this weekend, but then after that, it's sort of semi-okay with only Max Gawn in there as a tougher one. It's probably easier to show you here. So here's a pretty valid option as well. But realistically, besides that, you're not really looking at anyone else. Roll Marshall put up that 70 with the likes of Max Heath in the side on the weekend. He sort of saved that as well. We had a 34-point final quarter, so he was on like 35 at three-quarter time, so it could have been a 50 score. So that scares me off enough to not go with him, even though his run is okay as well, with obviously only Max Gawn in the final 6 weeks as a tough matchup. Obviously, Tristan Cherry is not going to be there in round 21 at this stage, so but if you do have Marshall, you're obviously holding this week, but it's a question mark whether what you do in the weeks coming. Obviously, if we have a bit more luxury trades next week, it could be someone that you trade out next week. If the likes of Max Heath holds his position in there, because that looked absolutely terrible, even though it didn't take a huge market share, it just was enough to throw him off, as we've seen before from Roll Marshall. So that's sort of where the ruck situation is at the moment. Oops. Yeah, that's fine. So that's where I'm at with my trades at this stage. Obviously going Tristan Cherry to Max Gawn, and that's sort of the ruck rundown I'm going with. But then I didn't have enough money to really do anything significant with Nick Martin, because at the end of the day, you need to pay up for the likes of a Jack Martin. Sorry, no. Jack Martin. Well, that is who I'm going to. But I was talking about Jack McRae, I should have said. I think he's by far the best option in terms of the forward line. So if you did have a bit of money banked, then I would definitely be going to a Jack Martin. A Jack McRae. Oh my God, the names are confusing the hell out of me today. He by far has the best run home, as we've been saying for a little while. It sort of starts to open up this weekend, and seeing how he goes. Put up the 90, which you'd be wrapped with in a tougher matchup against Sydney. I said he was going to go sub 80, so yeah, to take a 90, you're happy with that. The tackle numbers are just elite at this stage. I don't know what it is about champion data, but they're just going stupid with tackles in the recent weeks. So definitely something that you should be jumping onto if you can. But I'm jumping on Jack Martin at this stage just because I didn't have enough money to really do a huge amount with. Like, I had 850k exactly to play with. So if I look at the prices for the forwards here, as long as you guys can see that, I was 5k away from Cozzy Pickett. I was 9k away from Chad Warner. I was 12k away from Luke Parker, and I was 40k from a Petrarca, who are obviously probably the safer options in that sort of top echelon of these guys. So couldn't really afford any of them. I was playing around in the Lamore areas, the Sam Darcy areas, even the Justin McInerney sort of stages. Like, I just didn't want to play around with that. I'd rather save the coin this week, going all the way down to Jack Martin, who I'm hoping can be a safe sort of 70 and have a ceiling of 100 every now and then. Got 2 easier matchups in the next couple of weeks. Even on the run home, he's got Essendon in 4 weeks' time and Richmond to finish off. Could be someone that I just hold all the way through. He's a cheaper option, making some money. He's probably going to be 10 to 15 points off F6 at this stage, with that dropping probably another 5 points with Nick Martin out for the remainder of the season. So I'm hoping that's a decent option. It does leave me with about 200k in the bank for next week, who I obviously need to target, Bailey Smith. So that's going to cost me about 400k to get like a Ned Long up to him next week. So that's sort of my plan about next week. So that's just where I'm sort of trying to plan out and leave myself with enough funds to be able to make those moves next week. I did play around with, throwing a Luke Jackson in the ruck line for 1 week, but then it meant I need to choose between the likes of Max Gawn or a Bailey Smith next week, and I didn't really want to make that decision because I think both are just as important as each other, and running Luke Jackson in the ruck line for any more than sort of 1 week, I think is a mistake, because you're going to be losing massive amount of points there with, Tim English or Max Gawn easily probably going 120, 130 next week. Whereas Luke Jackson's going probably 95, if not even sub that, with how he's been performing the last couple of weeks, with just two sub 90s. So it's 40 points that you could be losing just in that one position, and I don't think you want to be running with those sort of options, unfortunately. Unless you have the luxury, you already have Bailey Smith, and you can grab a Max Gawn next week. That's probably where I'd be leaning to. But yeah, just make sure you have enough money to be able to do that. He will probably drop another, 40k, so that's definitely the preference. But for my team, with the way that I'm structured up, and I'm just trying to prioritize who I want in my side and when. So yeah, that's probably where I'd lean. You could go with a Luke Jackson into the ruck line for 1 week, and then get Max Gorn next week. If not, then I don't think you're waiting a week on Brody Grundy. He's not going to drop coins, so there's no real point. And he's up against North Melbourne. Like I said, without Tristan Cherry, he should go massive. So that's sort of the scenarios that you should be looking at. If you don't have Brody Grundy, jump on him, straightforward, no questions asked, just pay up. But if you don't have a Max Gorn, you can sort of play around a little bit and wait a week and see what he sort of does with a nicer matchups coming, but not really happening this weekend. But I'm still okay with going 1 week early if you just don't want to mess around too much, because you never know. We could have another 2 forced trades next week with all the issues we've got going on with other stuff. So, we want to get rid of Callum Mills at some stage. Ned Long, if you still got him. And, yeah, who knows with a forward line. You just don't know what's going to happen there. So, yeah, that's sort of where the team's at. So, hopefully that sort of answers a few of your questions. I will dive a little bit deeper into better trade options in the forward line and, every line there possible if you're looking elsewhere. So, in trade mode later this week. I'll probably record it on Tuesday a bit earlier than what I normally do. But yeah, hopefully you guys have enjoyed. Please leave a like and subscribe as you always do. Until then, I will see you later. Bye.